What I love about Hammonton the most is the people that live here.
The people? The people are fantastic.
La calidad de las personas.
The way the community gets together.
It seemed like a sense of community.
Yeah, strong sense of community.
I love how sincere everyone in Hammonton is.
We're also rooted in tradition here.
The traditions among the town.
The arts.
Activities and sports.
The bar and restaurant scene.
Events.
Friends and families.
The small town feel of Hammonton.
I would love to see Hammonton have more biking trails.
I feel like we need to expand more on the arts.
There can be more inclusivity with everybody.
I'd like to see the diversity continue.
More outdoor dining.
More playground equipment that's updated.
Accessible playgrounds and open spaces.
Downtown they should have more stores and stuff, for people to go in.
More police officers on duty at night.
Even more artists.
I would like to see a movie theater here.
Más eventos comerciales.
More people here need to get more involved.
I think it's important to get involved.
It would be nice to see more people involved because it really is a wonderful town.
Hammonton Heart and Soul is Grassroots, an apolitical project that aims to connect people with what they love about where they live. A small group of Hammonton volunteers have worked collectively to help get this project going. We've been around town chatting with residents and having candid conversations, asking what their hopes and dreams are for the future of Hammonton. We want to collect more stories. We want your story. And we are intentionally seeking out the voices of those who are rarely heard. We seek to first determine what matters to the people of Hammonton and then use this information to steer change rather than simply respond to it. Through Heart and Soul, we hope to be able to identify the qualities that Hammonton residents really treasure. The people, the places, the experiences that make us who we are. We are just beginning our work, and we want to hear from many more of you. Once we collect and review the information, we will use this data as a launching pad for local businesses, community leaders, and organizations to steer the course of our collective future. We aim to grow in a manner that Hammonton residents will embrace and trust. We ask you to consider participating in Heart and Soul and share your insights with us. Help us to build a home we love. Together, we can help create change to make Hammonton better for all of us.
Hammonton Heart and Soul es un proyecto sin fines políticos que tiene como objetivo conectar a las personas con lo que aman sobre donde viven. un pequeño grupo de voluntarios de Hammonton que han trabajado colectivamente para ayudar a poner en marcha este proyecto. Actualmente estamos realizando entrevistas para poder involucrar a los residentes en conversaciones sobre sus esperanzas para el futuro de nuestra ciudad. Esperamos involucrar a todos en nuestra comunidad y estamos buscando intencionalmente las voces de aquellos que rara vez se escuchan. Buscamos primero determinar lo que le importa a la gente de Hammonton y luego usar esta información para dirigir el cambio en lugar de simplemente responder a él. A través de Heart and Soul, esperamos poder identificar las cualidades que los residentes de Hammonton realmente valoran, la gente, los lugares, las experiencias que nos hacen ser quienes somos. Que realizamos más entrevistas y escuchamos a muchos más residentes de Hammonton. Una vez que recopilemos y revisemos la información, utilizaremos estos datos como plataforma de lanzamiento para que las empresas locales, los líderes comunitarios y las organizaciones dirijan el curso de nuestro futuro colectivo. Nuestro objetivo es crecer de una manera que los residentes de Hammonton acepten y confíen. Le pedimos que considere participar en Heart and Soul y comparta sus ideas con nosotros. Ayúdanos a construir una comunidad que amemos.
Welcome to Kramer Hall. With a variety of course offerings, public programs, and continuing education opportunities, Kramer Hall is the ideal location for you to continue your academic journey. My name is Christina Birchler, and I have the pleasure of serving as the director of Stockton University's campus here in Hammonton.
And my name is Nick Zabrowski, and I'm in charge of student and community programming.
My experience at Kramer Hall has been excellent. So as the director of the Master's Program in Counseling here at Stockton, all of our classes are held exclusively here at Kramer Hall. The staff are super attentive, and we often say this is our own little family and this is our home.
Even though it's just one building, I wasn't really sure what I was going to expect, but the staff is always so nice. I say hi to literally every single person I see. I always feel so welcomed and warm when I'm here. It's just a really good environment to learn in.
I would say definitely how close-knit the town is. There's a lot of little shops, bakeries, and everything that it's a little town to explore, which I think is really cute.
So my experience at Kramer Hall, it's been amazing. I absolutely love this area. I don't have to fight over parking, which is amazing. And you know, it's more compact. There's not a lot of people, so it feels more homey and yeah, more cohesive.
I think just the environment in general. I love the art. I love everything that's kind of comforting about it. And like I said, it's really nice to come somewhere that you just feel safe. You feel safe leaving, you feel safe coming. It's just a really nice environment.
It's like an intimate setting. I can find my professors when I want. So there's this awesome guy named Nick. He's just always there. He's on the ball, easily accessible.
It's been wonderful. For example, everyone's been supportive of me. When I was trying to get into a practicum, all the teachers reached out to me, and I just thought that was a wonderful thing. I didn't even have to reach out to them. They all reached out to me. It just blew my mind.
I like the small city feel, so everyone feels like they know each other. You know, the local shops are all so wonderful and so friendly, and it's just such a nice experience exploring the town and really showing what, you know, Hammonton has to offer.
We're here for you.
Take a class.
Visit our art galleries.
Use the computer lab.
Study in some of our quiet spaces.
Meet with your clubs and organizations.
Or attend a free workshop.
There's always room for you at Kramer Hall.
Welcome to the Joint Land Use Board meeting for January 31st. It's our special meeting that we're having, that we're going to talk, basically discuss start discussing the master plan in a little more length. Notice of this meeting has been properly posted and given to the official newspapers. Please familiarize yourself with the fire exits to the right and rear of council chambers, and please do not proceed beyond the front benches without an invitation to do so. And if you could, please silence your cell phones. If we could, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We could have a roll call, please.
Ed Willerman.
Here.
Councilman Oliva.
Here.
James Matra.
Here.
Mickey Palia. Ray Scipione.
Here.
Michael Messina.
Here.
Michael Hosick.
Present.
Ralph Capaccio.
Here.
Jonathan Bass. Chris Polani.
Here.
Chairman Oliva.
Here. So I'd like to let Jonathan lead us off at this point in time. And what we'll do is probably basically let John take the lead and then go around the room a little bit and see if everybody's kind of read into what we're going to discuss tonight, or if they have any questions. But let Jonathan take the lead at this point.
Sure. Thank you very much, Chairman. So when we broke last, we had, we'd gone through the first maybe 23 pages of the master plan. They were, very non-controversial. It was all kind of boilerplate stuff. And we said our goal for today was going to be to review the policy statements and supporting strategies. That is, those are distilled into the 41-page addendum, so to speak, that Stu put together, that takes the prior master plan's policy statements and then it shuffles it into here's what the 2023 recommendation is based off that policy statement or supporting strategy. It also shows all the new policy statements or supporting strategies. So our goal for tonight was to read those 41 pages and come tonight prepared to talk about things that we thought were of value. So here's how I think we should kind of categorize what we should discuss. Certainly, as everyone read every page, there were things that you read and you went, well, that's just good practice and I'm comfortable with that and it's non-controversial, consequential, I don't feel great about it, I don't feel bad about it, it is a thing, right? Those type of things I don't feel necessarily need to be brought up for individualized discussion because they're just inherently beneficial and they're non-controversial. They're not things to necessarily be dove into. But what I do feel is there's 3 buckets of items that as you've read through the reports that I feel like we should make sure everybody has the opportunity to talk about. The first is you've read through the plan and you've picked some things out that you go, this is really good. I'm very strongly in this corner. I appreciate how the master plan showcases this piece of information, or I'm really glad this information carried over appropriately or is shown new appropriately. So if you feel strongly about something that you've read, call it out and say, hey, I read through this, I feel strongly about that. That's the first bucket. The second bucket is, these are things that I read that I'm not necessarily comfortable with. I've read it, and I either don't understand it as written, or I have an issue with it as written, or I need more clarity on how it's written, how was this devised, or I just inherently disagree with what's written and I want to bring it up for discussion. So that's the second bucket of things too, items that you may have had an issue with. And then the third thing is, hey, I read through all 41 pages and I didn't see any blank. I didn't see any discussion about blank. Something you think might be missing from the plan that would be important for us to bring up tonight. So they're the 3 buckets that I think it's important to make sure if you had a part of your review that fell into that bucket that we openly discuss it. So Chairman, I think the easiest way to do that is to just open it up to the floor and either start at one end of the table. Before I do that, I'll ask Mr. Weiser if he has any words, but maybe start at one end of the table and just say, hey, Mr. Capaccio, you want to give us your thoughts if there's anything, and let's hit it. And then if we hit some of Mr. Messina's points along the way. Then when it gets to Mike, he can go through the other points. I just think we just go one after the other and hit all the pieces.
That's good. And you and I go last.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll be honest. Tonight, I don't have a whole lot other
Well,
than
you could interject with
I'll
that.
interject and
Right.
help
Between you and
provide
Stuart.
color or clarity as to
Okay.
how things came up. So, but with that, Mr. Planner, I don't know if you have any words or anything you'd like to
The
share?
only thing, and this may be a little redundant from a piece of the conversation from last time, but very quickly, what is distilled down into the 41 pages of the matrix is pages 23 through 131 of the big document. So just, if that, I don't want to add any confusion to anything, but if that provides any clarity whatsoever and any sort of cross-document guidance whatsoever, that is what it is.
Okay.
And we do have members of the public here this evening, so we appreciate you coming and you being a part of this process with us. There is a portion that's open to public comment, but if there's something that we start discussing and that may be the reason why you're here today and you want to have that open discussion at that time, Chairman, as long as you're comfortable with it, I'm perfectly comfortable with them approaching to discuss.
Absolutely.
Okay. So with that, I think Mr. Capaccio, if you're okay, I'd like to open it up to you and just say, let's just go through any parts of the matrix you want to discuss, and then once you're satisfied with our discussion, we'll continue to move on.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I know the chairman asked that everybody be involved. I went through it, and I think that ARH did such an excellent job distilling it. I didn't see anything that jumped out that I was totally opposed to. Everything made sense to me. That's all I really have.
Okay.
Thank you.
That was brief.
Well,
That's fine.
If I had something to say, I would say it.
Now I know you will. Yeah, okay.
All right, so Mr. Messina, I'll pass it to you.
Okay, as far as this here that was brought up by Stu, it seems everything is fine, and the few changes that were made from the previous year are more beneficial than the ones we had before.
Any one specifically that you feel are?
No, not really.
No. Okay. Okay, so no opposition as read or as reviewed. Okay. All right. Mr. Woolerman, I'll pass to you, and I know your review likely brought some things to light with your immense background.
I like the structure of how we boiled this down. I had made a number of observations running through this. I didn't know how exactly we were going to go through this presentation tonight. I didn't know whether we were going to try to go through each page or just what, so I don't have a whole list, but I do have some observations.
You want to just start on the first page and we'll hit each observation?
Yeah, the first few pages, believe it or not, I didn't have any.
Believe it or not, is that what you said?
Believe it or not.
Believe it or not, you didn't have anything?
There's no page.
No, because
there's a page with no red pen on it.
No,
that means we did good.
Marks on that.
I'll take it.
First two pages.
It's yellow pen.
First two pages.
It's yellow
pen.
I just, the first issue I came across was an issue with respect to what are we doing with densities and housing types, and it seems like in some instances we're talking about eliminating from different districts like the R districts all the clustering options, and on the other hand we're also talking about housing types where we're going to try to foster some level of garden apartments, townhouses, and so forth. And I think you can do that, but I'm just trying to put my mind around why you would eliminate the cluster for single-family detached in favor of the other housing types.
I don't think we are eliminating the.
What page was that on, Ed?
Well, on the third page, we're talking about on the third page, you're talking about I think that would be excuse me, your type point is very small.
It was either that or kill more trees.
It picks up a bit on page 18, okay, with the housing types and the clustering. It's in the report in a number of different spots, Michael. It's not just in one particular location, but if I remember right, the first place you can see it,
5333 is on 18.
That's where I jumped to. That's, I think, the first conversation.
Yeah. The density bonus provisions in
Density
R1, R2,
bonus.
and R3.
well, on page 15, for an example,
Page 15?
that policy statement at the top, cluster housing, multifamily development in appropriate locations in order to increase opportunities for affordable and other housing, preserve open space, protect natural areas, and so forth. And then, I can't put my finger on it right now, we also talk about the cluster housing option, which I would assume, at 8 units per acre, it's pretty.
I'm sorry, can you speak into the mic? I'm having trouble hearing.
The cluster option, which I would imagine would be pertinent to single-family detached, 8 units per acre does seem a little high. I don't know how you can maintain a cluster at 8 units per acre, and if that's the by right permitted density, and cluster that. It just didn't, But this issue in terms of which housing types and appropriate zones are we trying to encourage, and at the same time, what is it about cluster that we don't? And it's a generic question. I just pulled that out of the report.
If you go to page 17, down at the very bottom, the last line there, 532EE, it says clustering. There were, again, this is in this particular case, it's a reaction to prior recommendations, and the prior recommendation was to expand clustering.
Right.
And I think the conversation regarding undue density and maintaining the current feel of Hammonton led to the recommendation that's listed there that says clustering beyond what is currently permitted is no longer deemed appropriate. So it's not removing what is, pardon me, it's not eliminating clustering in mass, it's maintaining, the intent is to maintain the existing clustering scheme.
Right. Well, my only question is what we were doing with that and whether or not that was going to meet the policy that we would have to have in order to make the affordable test in case of any challenges defensible.
And that is a balance that every town is wrestling with as they address their affordable housing requirements. Right now, we have an affordable housing plan that is in place, so we're good there. It's been adopted, and the courts have approved it.
Right. It satisfies the
Yeah.
requirements.
My overarching goal, which appears over and over and over, is I don't want to do anything to upset the apple cart with respect to what the court approved.
Right.
So, to the extent that there is any inconsistency between what our current zoning plan is and what our current affordable housing plan is, the affordable housing plan is going to govern.
Right.
Okay? And I don't really know that there are any inconsistencies.
You know, it's really just it's a hypothetical. Our settlement agreement with Fair Share Housing talks about a number, COA talks about a number. How you achieve that number, okay, is up to us to sort of figure out as people come in with projects that deal with that particular issue.
The one thing I will say, and you know, you couched it as a hypothetical, and I totally get that, is right now, so the third round is about ready to expire. I think the COA third round, I think it expires in 2025. I forget exactly when. And there is a move in the legislature. I'm about halfway through fighting through a draft amendment to the statute that does a whole lot of things. And I don't even know whether it's going to pass or not. So I think part of the issue is trying to have a crystal ball and to figure out what our future obligations are going to be is just next to impossible.
Right.
So my goal was to preserve what we have, and at such time as the rules solidify, then we can start more planning as to what our future is going to be.
Another issue that I came across and tried to get some clarity on is in previous planning attempts, we wanted to develop a medical-related or hospital-related zoning district extending on, I guess, the easterly side of the White Horse Pike from the hospital as an anchor down to, I guess, the town boundary. Was that the extent of that particular zoning recommendation?
I think so, yeah.
Was it the end of the town boundary? All the way up past the high school? Or to that?
No, eastern side, he said.
Yeah.
It was focusing around Kessler.
Pike, yes.
From Kessler Hospital, basically.
Down out through, yes. Yep, down
and
through.
I think it was to the town boundary.
Right.
Yeah, I think it took it to the gas station. The gas station that's the Sunoco?
The
Just
Sunoco
closed.
State, the old, on the point there.
Yeah, right on the point.
Right.
Where the dentist office is, right there.
So what are we recommending now in terms of, are we modifying that? Are we trying to keep that zone?
So what we're recommending now is the whole reason for that, if you read through all of the prior master plans, was to use Kessler as the anchor. Obviously, Kessler's no longer there. I think, so it doesn't make sense to focus on that in that section of town. With the advent of the Atlanticare facility, sort of on the other side of 206, I think it makes more sense, and the plan recommends that those uses be focused on that section of town.
Because there's also an addition, so in addition to Atlanticare, and the reason why part of the reason why we repostured is that while Atlanticare is also there, there's also some doctor's offices on the opposite side of the White Horse Pike in that area too that are newer and opening up, and Atlanticare is planning to expand, further in the back to open up primary care, as they're there as well. Now, the old Kessler has a medical style use, right? And Sail Lake has changed. There's been a number of different uses in Sail Lake, but the 777 building and the Woolman complex, area, that has continued to be more, medical based. But we didn't in this plan.
Friedenthal's building is not medical anymore.
What
the old Friedenthal building, Dr. Friedenthal's building, which is in that corridor.
Yeah.
That is going. I'm just trying to get a sense as what are you recommending then?
Well, very simple. We're recommending that no affirmative replanning of the Kessler side to focus on medical needs to happen anymore. Certainly, if somebody wanted to come in and open a medical office, I don't think anybody would object to it. That's not the goal. The goal is, to the extent that there would be any affirmative municipal action to try to create a complex or create the setting for a complex, probably more appropriate on the west
Westerly
side
side.
than on the east side. But again, I think, there are some medical uses there. They can continue. If more medical uses want to pop up there, more power to them, that's fine.
I think our recommendation was more to keep that area as just affirmatively part of the HB zone, but not with the sight of trying to make it only a medical style use or complexes.
But wasn't there an issue at one point that medical offices actually weren't permitted in that zone?
In the HB?
It seems to me there was some fight about where we had to approve an exemption to allow medical offices. And I thought it was on the east end of town. It might not, that might be faulty memory.
Certainly predated me, I don't know the answer to that.
Definitely predated you.
Most of that area
It says now, so this was, well, it may have been at a period of time. It looks like there was an ordinance number 23-2011 that was adopted that makes permitted uses professional offices, doctors, dentists, architects, engineers. So it does, and similarly licensed registered professionals, there's like a whole bunch of different things in there, office buildings. So it does look like doctors' offices, hospitals, et cetera, are approved uses in the HB district.
Okay, but that happened in 2011?
2011.
Okay,
that post dates the previous master plan.
That may be the reason why all of that was laid out the way it was.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but how long is the Augusta building?
I think there was something with the Augusta building that I had a zone for that at one point. I'm almost positive I was there a while back.
I think you're right.
Well, it wouldn't absolve a use from needing to go to the board or a development use to needing to go to the planning board or zoning board.
No, but they wouldn't need special approval for that use.
Correct, they wouldn't need special approval for that use.
So they'd need site plan and whatever bulk, but they wouldn't need a D variance.
Right, because it would be a permitted use in the zone.
Exactly.
Fine, it was just rattling through my head, sorry.
Yeah.
So, I knew that I was going to use that map tonight.
It's the biggest map we've had in this room in a long time.
Is that the official map?
Essentially,
That
the uses
is
in this highway business and this highway, they're the same, correct?
correct, yes.
There's going to be no distinction between what we're trying to encourage to locate here with respect to medical uses as opposed to here now that Atlantic Care is there.
Correct.
So your zoning provisions will read, as far as the permitted use, identically.
In either end of the HB district, as well as the HB that comes in from the expressway, that blue that's right there, and then what comes down 206.
All blue.
All the blue, yeah.
All those will essentially be open to any type of doctor's office.
Correct.
Professional office in general.
Yep. Restaurants, office buildings, indoor theaters, bowling alleys, garden centers, shopping centers, local retail activities, supermarkets, delis, bakeries, drugstores, that type of stuff.
Let's see.
I'm looking here at the section of the master plan that addresses the specifics on the HB zone, and there's a lot of recommendations as to clarifications. There's some recommendations to expand the zone, to contract the zone in favor of what else is going on in that area. There is a conversation regarding assisted living in the HB zone and a recommendation that the use be eliminated from certain specific blocks and lots. But there's nothing that says don't permit medical there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So it's tinkering and refining, but it's not wholesale change.
Okay. The other issue, of course, we talked about is district boundaries. And I tried to make that point in a previous meeting, and without the benefit of being able to see the entire town, I thought it would be very difficult to visualize the point I was trying to make. And I understand that some of the recommendations, I guess that is in chapter 6, right? Yes. They're all pretty much by Pinelands Planning District and or zoning district. Okay. Correct. In some cases, they are the same, and in other cases, there is a difference. And what I would like to point out to the board members is the difference. If you look at the map, that's the entirety of the town. It's more or less 40 square miles. If you see the dark green area, that end of the map is the north end of the map. That is the Wharton State Park boundary, which is also the Pinelands Preservation Area District boundary, both from the Pinelands and from our zoning. The lighter green area, okay, it's not the lightest, but it's one step down from the dark green area.
No, you're talking about here, you're
I'm
talking
about the forest.
Forest areas still.
That's this,
Right.
this version of green.
Right. That is a forest district which is not as intensely regulated as the preservation area, where the threshold of development potential is really, really reduced. The forest district is somewhat less, it's moderated in terms of its restrictiveness in terms of land uses, but still nonetheless pretty constrained in terms of development potential. The light green area is an ag production area. Okay, now in each case of those three districts, those are Pineland districts boundaries which are going to be pretty much set in stone. Not that they can't be changed or adjusted, but that would be a rather heavy lift. You would have to go to the Pinelands Commission. We would probably be talking about trade-offs in terms of this much for that much. And I think that is a little bit more problematic. Inside the center area where you have most of the different colors, that is the Pinelands town. That is what's left that we have the most discretion and the most control over within the framework of the CMP, the Pinelands Comprehensive Management Plan. Just can't do anything, but we have the most amount of discretion and the most opportunity for development in the town. Going forward, it would be what I call our manifest destiny, which we would like to try to protect as much as possible, because I don't really think we get much of a chance to get another bite of the apple with the Pinelands Commission going forward. We really have, what your plan talks to, in a sense, a pretty good, smart growth plan, because the Pinelands gave it to us. It's not like we're going to move up into the Wharton Park and start building Levittown. But my major point is that I think we should be very protective of that area where we do have some discretion and some ability for future growth, living room as the town grows, regardless of what it may be in its existing land use, whether it's one thing or another, because we're pretty built as it is. You see a lot of pressure for infill development. You see a lot of lots that in the past were sort of passed over. Now you see a lot of those opportunities being taken to develop those lots. And what the map doesn't show is the amount of area that is really within that is constrained from development because of natural reasons, such as wetlands and wetland buffers. So if you take the built area out, if you take the wetlands and the wetlands buffers out, the area that's left that you can, look forward to some modicum, 10-cent word, of future development in the town is, is not great. So I don't think we should be adjusting boundaries between ag production areas and the Pinelands town, taking that too lightly. Within the Pinelands town itself, within that colored region, we can tweak those boundaries between zoning districts as much as we want, because, if If it makes sense to change them, let's change them. And that's all I would say in terms of where my concern is and where my focus, I believe we should be, looking at.
And I think the best way, and I totally get what you're saying, I think the best way to address your concerns and to discuss whether it makes sense to move a line or not move a line is when we get into the review of each particular zone.
Exactly.
When we start reviewing Section 6.
Right.
Because for those who haven't gotten that far, Section 6 effectively has a chapter, 2 or 3 pages, whatever it is, that addresses each particular zone with recommendations as to moving lot lines, or not lot lines, excuse me, zone boundary lines, adjusting language in the ordinance, adding things, deleting things, et cetera, and that's really where the meat of the recommendations lie.
Yeah, because once you start doing that, and once we get to that point, we never want to hurt anybody, one way or the other. You don't want to take property away from somebody that has something that's developable that becomes non-developed because we moved something. And that's the last thing we want to do here.
Yeah, so if I could hop in real quick. Mr. Woolham and I had a really good discussion 2 weeks ago, and he educated me on some things that I wasn't aware of when we originally started working on this. So the part that I was aware of is everything you see that's in green, right? That's the Pinelands management area where if you were going to try to make modifications to that area and you were going to take some of it away, well, it's going to come, with it or high water, right? It's not going to just happen, right? So it's going to be a big thing. Everything that's in color, minus green, that's part of the Pinelands town. If you were to try to move AP or something into that, well, the Pinelands is going to welcome it because you're now making undevelopable space, but you're taking away the living space, the developable space, and you're gifting it effectively to an undevelopable use. The part that I, wasn't thinking about at the time that we started to put this together, so we'll talk about it more in the next phase of this, is that you'll look at, if you've read ahead and or you've looked around town, you may see that there are some very small developed areas of AP, or there are some areas of RR that are farmed like AP. So you think that a logical swap of those uses would tidy it up, so to speak, and that's kind of where my head was at the time. But what that does do is that takes that property that's in that RR use, a developable use, and it moves it into a less developable use. And you're taking away part of what is the Pinelands town, and as Ed has said, your manifest destiny, and you shrink that. Mm-hmm. That was something that I didn't conceptualize, and the number of modifications in the Pinelands management town versus the Pinelands management area, we're talking what, Stu, 6, 7?
I think depending
small?
on how you whack them up, there may be as many as 11.
11, right.
And
I think some of them are like same side of the street, so
yes, it's
a small number.
Some are moving it an inch, and some are more substantial, other than where we changed the lines to reflect current lot geometry, with the improvement to the quality of our base map.
So that's something that we'll talk about in the next stretch, that I agree part of the Master Plan Implementation Committee had tidied things up a bit, but with respect to our goal of keeping the town in the best position for infill development and to continue to grow and thrive, that we should look at those areas as retaining that additional space that we have to be developed. So I completely agree with you.
Well, thank you. The only other, we mentioned in the plan that we should take into consideration areas that have been designated for redevelopment. And I think in our report, we call out some of them that the town council has already designated as areas of redevelopment. there are some fuzzy things floating out there that seem to be a misunderstanding as to whether or not they have ever been designated as an area for redevelopment. The recommendation is that we incorporate the ones that have been officially designated as such by town council and incorporate that into the master plan, so we are aware of what those plans are and how they relate to this. The ones that are just speculative and have no basis in fact or action that was ever taken by council, we should just eliminate them.
Well,
Because I think they cause some confusion.
I looked at this in depth this morning, as a matter of fact, and what the language says is that you're absolutely right. There are those where we have the resolutions, we have the documentation, we know these areas were formally designated to be in need of redevelopment, and for many of them, there's a redevelopment plan. We have other sections that there are references in some of the prior master planning documents, but nobody could find any ordinances or resolutions formalizing that process. What we say is we recognize that this is the historical situation we find ourselves in, but we take a look at them in the future if and when it's appropriate. It may never be appropriate. And I don't know that given the condition of some of these properties where they're located, that they would rise to the top in terms of priorities. They're not downtown.
Well, my only point, and I understand what you're saying, is that if they have not been identified specifically and through ordinance, okay, positive action by the town as an area in need of redevelopment, I don't think we should speculate as to whether or not there is any more other than those that have been identified and actually established.
I hear what you're saying, and maybe we could take a closer look at the language. My goal was to recognize the history and to put it to bed, and not to, because if we say nothing about it, then somebody in the future is going to say, well, I thought these were in need of redevelopment. And my goal was to say there's no substantiation for that. However we write that, and if I was not as clear on my language as I could have been, we could certainly take a look at that.
Okay. The other points, I mean, and we can, I think the major things that I had wanted to identify, the majority of this is good. It's just, taking policy statements from the past, seeing how they were translated coming into present day, and making some statements as to whether or not they seem to be apropos or not unobsolete, if I can coin a word, going forward. And some clearly the things that we had focused on in the past, like the hospital zone without the hospital, and other recommendations from past master planning efforts in the context of what we know today, clearly, they have no relevancy and they should be eliminated. And as far as the broad statement of policies that you identified here, I have, no major disagreement with. I think, the meat and potatoes is going to be in chapter 6, when you're focusing on the tweaks you want to make to the zoning. And as long as we're sort of sensitive to the area, to the issue that I brought up with respect to, our living space in the town, I think that whatever you identified as we go through it should be, just a matter of tweaking. And I have no problem.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Woolman. So we talked about a couple different items there. I'm sure Shelley's taking minutes. I'm taking some items so that this way we can share them with any of the other individuals who may not have been able to be here tonight, and then they can comment so we can make sure we hit any of those other items.
And we are being recorded, is that correct?
Yes, we are live. Yeah, we are live on Access Hammonton.
That's what I thought.
Jimmy texted me saying he can hear us pretty good, so I know we're on, and will be recorded as well. Okay, so with that, Mr. Shabion, pass to you.
I have nothing tonight, I'm sorry.
No worries.
Not prepared. I was officially reappointed on the 18th, so I will be more prepared next meeting.
When we get to that, do you have anything?
Thank you.
We're going to go
Okay.
through it all.
Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
we're not done here tonight.
Yeah,
so.
we're not moving the whole thing forward tonight.
Okay, so you got a summary of that,
I do.
the master plan, but then there's the thick one Shelley can give you as well.
Yep.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right.
Would you like to go, Chairman Lee, would you like to skip and
Yeah, we could skip.
jump?
Yeah,
and you'll
jump,
finish
and
it?
then I'll, yeah.
Okay, so Mr. Kalani will.
Well, actually, I'd prefer to, I'm probably the youngest one on this board, unless I'm moving back into town, so what I've read through, I'd still like to hear more from people.
Okay.
Understanding that way, because, you know, a lot of you have a lot of history here that, you know, I'm just getting back into, and I prefer to listen to it that way.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, you got it. So Jimmy, I'll pass to you.
Well,
Mr. Major, I'm sorry.
I'm pretty comfortable with everything I read. I did have some question about clustering, where it was going, but you pretty much answered that, so I'm comfortable there too. Other than that, I'm pretty good with it.
All right, and Dr. Hosick?
I want to, first of all, compliment Stuart on this summary. I thought it was excellent and incredibly helpful at digging out the points to focus on. One of my main concerns, and it's well incorporated in here, and I'm very happy to see it, is that we work to maintain the kind of character that we have in our town. And that we're going to try not to do development that damages that character. And says that, but I was very happy to see that.
Anything else?
No, I don't really.
Okay. Pretty much what Mr. Wool, I'll go next, since I'm last here, and then go back. Since Mr. Woolman summed up a lot of the things that I was concerned about as well, whether or not we're talking about the district lines and making sure that everything is kind of preserved the best way we could. So I like that part as well, and just to jump on what Doc Hosick said is, one of the things I want further clarified if we could is like signage. Signage, you know, for downtown and also any other buildings that we have put up in the town. I don't think we emphasize enough on signage. If we could do something additional to that. Because coming through, whether it be them coming through the office upstairs and somebody wants to just put a sign up that looks terrible, it's not doing what Doc Hosick is talking about, the character of our town and the historic preservation that we need to maintain for our town. And I think that's something we have to kind of address a little bit better. And I don't think we address it well enough, unless I'm incorrect. Because correct me if I'm wrong.
No, so signs, and Stu is certainly the expert at this. I'll just hit what I know. Signs it's kind of a tricky thing. It's tough to work through. Now we have a signs ordinance that falls under part 175, 161. But then we also have another signs part that is under the downtown and form-based code portion of the plan. So when it comes to the downtown elements, it's very prescriptive. And I think it's pretty descriptive. But certainly we could dive in and do a little rework. I do agree that with respect to signs outside of the downtown, it's a pretty light. The sign ordinance is pretty light. Is there, Mr. Chairman, is there something specific that you think should be addressed that is not currently being addressed? Or do you think that maybe a recommendation of the master plan should be to perform a full deep dive review of our existing sign ordinance and to modify as appropriate or as deemed appropriate by the board.
Well, that's exactly where we need to go, and I think it needs to be a deeper dive. Stuart?
So,
Go ahead.
the recommendation that's in there says, review the town's signage regulations to ensure that they support the economic development goals of the municipality while not detracting from community character. Now, we can tweak that language and beef it up if that's what you want. I think the one thing I would be careful about is that I think this is that would be a project in and of itself. I don't think I think it's something that we want to review as part of the review of the ordinance after this is adopted, rather than doing it as part of, with specific like recommendations and graphics and everything that's part of the master plan itself.
Okay, because what we do when we turn around and we have our Main Street program with HRC, where they turn around and are willing to help these businesses with their signage, they turn around and some of them just don't want to be bothered and want to put a sign up the way they want to put a sign up. And I wish we would have just a little bit more control of that, to go back to if we could control that, to go back to the character of our town and the historic preservation for our town.
And
I don't want a sign that somebody's going to put, letters on a sign and then hang it up, and then we have no control of that.
I'm totally with you on that. I absolutely agree with you 1,000,000%. And let's work together to beef up the language of the recommendation in here. So the recommendation says exactly what you want it to say.
Okay.
I agree. I think we should, so if we can beef up the language but not be prescriptive on the exact design or use, that comes with the ordinance modification.
That's
so
fine.
similarly to as we continue to review, we know that we have zones that have deficiencies. Like we know the R3 zone has no setbacks, right? Like we know that's something that needs to be corrected. There are certain items that need to be corrected that the plan says there is a supporting strategy to correct this issue, which gives us as a board the authority, once the master plan is enacted, to say the master plan recommends that we do this, and now we're going to move forward with recommending and adopting an ordinance or passing an ordinance off to council that rectifies this issue that we denoted from the master plan. So, as Chairman Leo said, signage is something we want to review. We get that more structured language into here. Once the master plan is approved, we know, all right, setbacks, signage, solar, whatever it may be, those are the main items that we want to go through, and we want to make ordinance recommendations to council on, and then we can come up with the wording we want, have Mr. Gardy put them together, and we get it to council.
I actually did a signed plan when I was with my previous firm for the Wildwood Boardwalk. And it was very similar, Councilman, to the approach we took on the parklets, where there was a picture of something, of a bunch of elements, and it said these are encouraged, and a bunch of pictures that said these are discouraged, and that became the guide for where leniency, versus strictness was applied by the town, the city, and it could be something that the Main Street group can use in terms of where they want to, as an underpinning as to where they want to provide funding and other support.
Okay.
And the signs, that also includes people that write directly on their, I believe you have something for people that write directly on their building, that'll paint directly on their building a sign?
Yes.
Because I know there's a certain amount of a percentage that you can't.
Yes.
You know, yeah.
Yes. Yes, you can't cover a certain percentage.
Certain amount, your sign has to meet a certain amount
size.
of percent. Yes.
Yeah. So somebody was going to just paint something on the side of their structure. Yes.
And I think we have been sensitive to this kind of thing. we went through a lot of issues with the signage at Harbor Freight, for example.
We did.
And I think there never should have been the possibility of those poles sticking up above the sign the way it almost came out, well, it almost came out that way. But we also need to be careful in drafting our sign ordinance. And this is something that took me a while. I had to get older and struggle more, I guess. Signs on the White Horse Pike on Route 54 and Route 206 need to be bigger than signs in downtown areas or in other areas, because people driving in cars, right, and at some speed, the sign has to be big enough so that you can read the doggone thing. There have been the entrance to Atlantic Air. I struggled to find the first couple times I went there, and they have they have a nice sign. It's not that they didn't sign it, but it didn't work for me driving down the pike to see where I needed to turn.
With a street address would be very helpful, because sometimes you have an address, but you can't make out the exact store location. But if you do know you're getting close, if there's an address there, it helps. At least that's...
Yeah, I think the form-based code, the way it details signage, I think it needs to be revised a little bit, but the approach is generally good. I think one of the things, and I think we have it in a recommendation, and if we don't, we'll put it in with your permission, is that those signage regulations should be expanded beyond just the form-based code districts, beyond just the downtown districts and the gateway districts. So, for example, the gateway signage regulations should apply to the HB zone as well. So it hits the entirety of the White Horse Pike. So you don't have just what can be a drastic change in sign design and sign regulations leading to the design just because you pass a side street. And I think similarly for downtown signage needs to be appropriate to the area, not appropriate to the zone.
Well, exactly, because if you go from one block to the next in our town,
exactly,
I'll just leave it there.
Yeah. So I think we're all saying the same thing.
Okay.
I too, I want to compliment both Stu and Jonathan. The depth of investigation that has been done was really significant and impressive. One thing that, as I sit here as a member, and I know the advantage I have of my familiarity with the town and with previous master plan efforts and the zoning ordinance in general, I often wonder if my fellow colleagues and the general public know what we take for granted, and which I think you two guys probably have, and I'm really impressed at the depth of understanding that you have. I mean, a professional planner, you would anticipate they would know. But as an elected official, the knowledge you have of each one of these individual districts. We sit here and review things, and I'm not sure all the time that everybody has the familiarity with the district and the purpose of the district, that application that arises from that, what we're trying to do. And I don't know if you would be comfortable enough or not. I know you both have the knowledge to do short, really go through those districts in the downtown, what they are and what the purpose is. Would you be comfortable to do that, like off the top of your head?
Yeah, absolutely.
Before he finishes, I just had one more thing to say.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were done.
No, that's okay. Yeah, there's just one more thing.
Go ahead.
Did we finish addressing the accessory structure issue?
The first reading was in January. The next reading will be in February, and that will take care of the sizes. The height is already voted on and approved.
That you did last year.
Yes, and the size of the accessory structure will be heard for public hearing in February, and then the stop period takes at the beginning of March.
Okay, and that fits into addressed in the
That
master
fits
plan?
into addressed into the master plan, which addresses this board's original comments and the construction officials' challenges and issues. And that passed council 7-0 unanimously in
Okay.
the last review.
I know there was a little bit you kind of took out of it from what our discussion was to begin with, correct?
Yeah. So so what we did what we did in the review, ultimately what we did in the review of accessory structures was there was a challenge upstairs at the construction official where any, and I'm not sure who knows all this, so I'm just going to kind of hit it head on so everybody's aware. If you wanted to put a shed or a pole barn or something on your property, even if you had a plenty of space, you were in R3 and you wanted to put up a 200 square foot shed, was perfectly permissible. If you had a rancher, your shed or accessory structure can only be half the height of your principal structure. So if you have a rancher that was built in the 1960s or 70s, like most towns or most buildings in Hammonton, residentials in Hammonton, you could only have a structure whose peak is 8 feet. So you couldn't go to Home Depot and just buy a shed and have it dropped off and have the peak be less than 8 feet. So at that point now people have to come to the board and have to file an application with a variance to put a shed that complies, meets setbacks, meets guidelines and everything, but it's just too tall. So we made the modification, ultimately that removes that and takes that height to 20 feet. And then what we also did was we recognized that there are a number of properties that are in zones where the minimum size of the zone, let's just say R1, is a quarter of an acre. However, there are a number of lots that are a third of an acre, half of an acre, 3/4 of an acre, and it's not just a very small number, it's a decent number. Those individuals were still handicapped by the R1 zoning 400 square foot permissible accessory structure size. So what we did was we modified that to say that if you had the lot minimum, then you would adhere to that lot minimum size that was prescriptive. However, if you were a larger sized lot, then you would be a percentage of lot area. It would give you a percentage of lot area. So essentially, if you were half of an acre instead of a quarter an acre, you would get a larger accessory structure permitted space. There's a calculation in there to help you calculate it. So that's what we're moving forward with now, so that it focuses more on lot area than it does on the fact that you're just happen to be a lot in this zone.
Provided within reason, if the lot is substantially bigger, it can be further subdivided.
Correct.
If you give them an accessory use permit on a larger lot, and then they subdivide it, and do they get another whack at the accessory use?
Yeah, well, the bottom line is we want to take off those handicaps for some of those things that may be considered ridiculous.
Yeah, well, when
But
you
that
have
is a
nothing
point,
at all,
that is a
it's
point from the
ridiculous.
other direction, though.
Exactly. Okay. I'm done now.
Do you
Well,
feel-
not really, but I'm okay for right now.
Oh,
Yeah.
I
No,
thought you-
it's okay.
Do you feel comfortable doing that, John?
I do. Yes, absolutely. So before I hop into just the downtown, since I think that kind of concludes our.
John, give me 1 second.
Yeah.
Does
Oh,
anybody
yes.
does anybody have anything to interject from out there that wants to say anything? Just want to throw that out there for a second. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, make sure if there's anything that you want to address,
Yeah,
please feel
just
free to.
tip your hat or what.
Okay. So yeah, we can go into each of the downtown zones. I'll explain them a little more deeply. Before we get there, a little look ahead, because we've now talked through essentially the first 131 pages of this plan. The next roughly 131 pages are focusing corely on that map and what is permissible in each of the different colors on that map. So as you look at it, you see green, and green is the more densely green special preservation area, the very dense green, then the bright green is forest area, the more lime green the more lime green, I'm sorry, the very bright green is preservation area, the lime green is forest area, and then the very light green is AP. That's about 70% of the land mass of the town. It's about 27 square acres. So when Mr. Woolerman says, I'm sorry, square acres, square miles, 27 square miles. So when Mr. Woolerman, says the Pinelands town is really only about 12 to 13 square miles. Right. That's everything that's in color there. So that light green, any color of green space is pretty much undevelopable area. When you look at it, you then see of varying colors of yellow and orange. There's a very, very light yellow. That is your R1. There is then what looks to be a little bit brighter yellow, that's R2. A light orange, which is R3, and then a dark orange, which is RR. They are all your residential districts. R1 is the most dense residential. Those are your neighborhoods like Lakeshore Drive and Grape Street, Peach Street, the core, dense residential areas. Then you have, your R2. And your R2 might be like out on 4th Street by the schools and North Street and things and areas out there. R3 is more like out down First Road, for South First Road, North First Road, either one of the sides out there. And then RR is further out, 8th Street, 9th Street, up against the AP districts. That's going to be your least dense residential, which is going to be one home per acre or greater, as opposed to R1 is one home per quarter of an acre lot. So you go from most dense to least dense. Your permissions across the zones vary slightly. I wouldn't say it's a whole lot. Residential is pretty similar all around, but there is a little bit of differences between the far side of the zone R1 and the other far side of the zone RR. Then everything you see in blue is your highway business district. That's HB. That is effectively your retail shops. That is your hospitals, doctor's offices, professional services, automotive stores, gas stations, restaurants, bowling alleys, garden centers, etc. That's where you want to try to bring in a number of your, let's just say, national chain type stores, right? So your Applebee's, ShopRite's, those kind of things are out there. Similarly to that though, and flanking the Route 206 corridor on either side, you see this brown color, and that is the Gateway 2 district, just
Gateway
outside.
2?
It's like Gateway 2, like right, splitting 206.
The puzzle piece.
Yeah, right there. And the next one. That's Gateway 2. That is similar uses to HB, but it is with a character trait that is more similar to Main Street or downtown Hammonton, because it's effectively the thing you see as you get into like the core business part of town. If you're coming off 206 or you're coming off the White Horse Pike, before you make that turn.
That used to be all part of the highway business district at one time.
Yes. Mm-hmm. It used to all be,
right.
Yep, it was carved.
And explain, the two of you, why you made a distinction there, why it was done back in the day.
Well, predated me, but it is my understanding that when the town undertook the form-based code process, obviously in the downtown, all the DTs, those are form-based code zoning districts, and then the GWs are also form-based code. And there was, just as its name implies, Gateway, GW, was the goal was to, as you're coming down, where am I? 206, you hit this big intersection where Wawa is and the diner, and that is sort of the gateway into not the municipality, but the town section of the municipality, coming from, I'm sorry, I'm losing my battery here, coming from the west, coming from the east, and coming from the north.
I was involved in this, was not before my time. And I mean, what you said is factually correct. I think that the gateway districts were somewhat aspirational. That is, we wanted to encourage a development that made it look more towny than shopping centers. And so I know in my head, the image I had was for the gateway district, if you're going to build a shopping center in a gateway district, it ought to look more like the promenade up off 73, yeah, 73, than a strip mall. And we kind of lost it with the Wawa, which was not supposed to be there. And the other side of that hasn't been redeveloped yet.
Right.
So anyway, that's why I say it was aspirational, and
well,
it didn't work out quite as well as some of us might have liked.
And your historical perspective is greatly appreciated. There's a lot of little nuances that go on between these different districts, the gateway districts and the downtown districts, and to have an appreciation as to what was trying to be accomplished with that zoning, that distinguished it from being just part of the highway commercial district, is what I think we really need to try to share amongst the board members and the public too, so that they understand why there is a difference between highway commercial and gateway 1 or gateway 2 or whatever. That's the kind of thing that I think was sort of missing, that I would love to be able to develop within the board and the general public an appreciation.
Well, I think, if I may, I think part of what got lost in aspirational intent and written language is that when the gateway ordinance, when the gateway and downtown sections of Chapter 175 were written, the purpose section and the purpose and intent sections either aren't there or they're just cut and paste, and it's the same for all of them. And I really think they need to be, especially for downtown and especially for gateway, but for all the zones, they need to be beefed up to actually explain what we're trying to do in each of the zones.
And just one little side comment, not to get off the track. I think, the town worked with Wawa, and Wawa really worked with the town to try to do as much as they could to accommodate what we were trying to do there. You may not agree with it, but I think they were very cooperative. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. So also, I guess so that kind of covers gateway, and then you'll see a couple other colors that are in there that are either the mixed use zone, which there is one, and there's the industrial zone that's in there too. Industrial zone is exactly as you'd imagine to be. Core industrial uses.
Do you want to point to them?
Yes, dude.
Get up and point to that.
As long as everybody's
You want mine?
No, I'll come over.
So that's the
That's
M1.
That's your mixed
That's
use.
the M1.
Yep, so, I feel like Bob Barker. So the M1 here, there's your mixed use. Mixed use is, could be residential, it could be apartments, it could be small commercial, it could be a series of different things. That's your zone. That's that usually is a buffer between your highway business district area and your residential type area. You have your M1 zone that's out here, and then really what the core of the discussion that Mr. Woolman had asked for are these downtown districts, and you'll see here they're listed as DT1 through DT4. Stu and I, as well as the rest of the master plan implementation team, made the recommendation to change them to numbers as opposed to descriptions, because everything else is R1, R2, R3. So we thought we'd break that into numbers, because the way it is now is it's just downtown something, downtown something. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I'm going to try and do this from memory, and Stu may be able to correct me if he has the page in front of him. Downtown 1, or what is DTT1, is effectively like downtown residential. They're your cottage homes, they're your smaller residential. There's not really, business in that area. There may be some home office type occupations, but for the most part, that is like downtown residential, and that is actually called, Stu, is that called downtown near town?
Which, this is
DT1? Is that technically called downtown
Let me
near
find
town?
it. Give me a hot second.
So the reason why it's confusing, there's downtown near town, downtown in town, downtown near town railway, and then there's downtown. Those are the 4 DT districts that we currently have. You can imagine how confusing that is. You can imagine how confusing that is when somebody comes in, they say, oh, I want to go to downtown Hammonton, and they see those 4 districts, and they're all spoken of that way. Well, nobody really understands.
So the DT1 is downtown, near town.
Near town, good, okay. And then DT2.
Let me go through, because it'll be easier. What we are recommending, what the master plan is currently recommending is, rather than having it called downtown near town, and then DT1, we're simply saying it should be standardized as ND near downtown.
Right.
Not with numbers, so we
actually
took the numbers away.
Okay.
Because it was more confusing leaving them in.
Okay.
So we just have them near, that one near downtown.
Okay. So that's what technically is considered downtown near town. So that's small cottage homes, residential. Then you go to DT2. DT2 is inching you closer into the core downtown area. So that area is
It's currently called downtown in-town railway.
Right.
What we are recommending it be called downtown railroad dealer.
Okay. So those are, in some cases, there's residential, in some cases there's home occupations, in some cases there's first floor occupational use, second floor residential. So it becomes a combination of business and residential in those areas. Think Front Street, the area of Front Street by the fire department area. You have some apartments, first floor, second floor. You've got some businesses, first floor, apartment, second floor, that type of use. Then DT3, that's getting you further to the core downtown area.
So that one is downtown in town.
That's downtown in town, and that's going to be what?
And we are recommending that be changed to simply in town, IT.
Okay.
And there's no magic, if somebody comes up with
So those are the businesses that are in the center of town?
No, that's not the core downtown, the NPP district. That's the around downtown area. So that's
sort of like the donut.
pretty much Iliados that comes up to the NPP district, works its way around, and when I say around, I mean you get to West End, you kind of go around West End to the distillery, you come up to Orchard, you go up Orchard where the Central is and over the railroad, keep going back behind there. So you're not technically crusting the center of downtown, but you're working your way in a bubble shape around the core downtown.
You used an acronym, NPP.
Neighborhood Preservation Program.
Yes.
And it was a grant program that we got grant funds from, and we actually designated the NPP area at one point.
And it's still active.
Yes, it is. So that
Not everybody knows that.
I know, I was in fact going to interrupt him after. You interrupted before I got to interrupt.
Okay.
So DT3 is, that's where you start to get into your restaurants, occupations, convenience stores, things like Bagliani's and the Mexican restaurants and stuff are in there, the breweries, etc. So you start to get into more of that commercial use feel. Then you get into what is DT4. That is your core downtown. That is also mimics your NPP district.
That is cleverly named Downtown.
So is that?
It's a downtown so nice they had to name it twice.
So is it just DT?
Actually, no.
It should probably be just DT.
What we recommended is we call it the Downtown Business District, DBD. There's no magic to it.
We might want to talk about what they all are, just for the sake of making sure that they make.
Yeah, that they make sense.
Make more sense.
I came up with it. Again, no pride in authorship.
Yeah. So that downtown area, that is the core downtown district. So that is pretty much everything from Wawa West End, all the way up Bellevue, all the way until you get to 7-Eleven. So that is that stretch, and it takes you back to the back end of Vine Street on the one side and the back end of Orchard on the other side. So it's pretty much Bellevue and the block on either side of it. That's your core downtown area. That's going to be your space where immediately outside of your business, it's sidewalk, it's state public right away, and that's going to be where it's extremely heavy, commercial use, and there's a whole plethora of different uses that are permitted there. That overlays with the NPP district. For those that are not familiar, the Neighborhood Preservation Program is something that we have leveraged to acquire grants to help us continue to develop the downtown. For those that aren't entirely familiar, Main Street Hammonton or Downtown Hammonton or Hammonton Revitalization Corporation, whichever you may call it, is ultimately a subsidiary of the Hammonton Chamber of Commerce. So it was created 40 years ago. And then it was ultimately formally spun off as like its own individual board. I want to say it was about 30 years ago. So they do a tremendous amount on their own. And because of their designation as Downtown Hammonton and through the NPP district, they are eligible and their businesses are eligible for a number of additional grant opportunities or financial opportunities. So they're broken out uniquely as per the way that we have carved out the program and communicated the program to various other state regulators or boards or entities as we've worked to gather additional grant dollars to help continue to fund and support and expand downtown. Because I think we all may recall what downtown looked like 30 years ago, and it certainly has made a pretty tremendous change in that time. So really, as you look through the numbers, you look through the outside, it goes from downtown residential, small cottage homes, all the way up to core downtown districting, and it gets progressively more busy inside.
So, the point is, and you did an excellent job the way I thought the two of you would in explaining that. It's something I always had the hope that we could get all the members of the board up to speed on. When we do get into Chapter 6 and we do get into those zoning tweaks, in the larger districts, it's not that much as important. I mean, it is important, but when we get at this or granular level, I would like to probably see a map of just that area you went through with all the different downtown districts. There is a lot of nuanced differences between those districts, but it's important, I think, that everybody, the public and the board, understands what was trying to be accomplished and what we're trying to capture there, because it's rather nuanced. Your description of it was, very, very subtle changes as you go from one of those zoning districts to the other. And I think it's important that we understand what the intent was behind that when we get done this process.
Yeah, completely agree. And as we go through the zone boundary lines in the next portion of this, you'll see that when it comes to zone boundary changes between the Pinelands town, the Pinelands Commission area, few and far between. One or two here, one or two here, and some of those may be reverting back after, a number of them are probably going to revert back after our discussion. Inside here, inside the Pinelands town, you'll see that there's some zone boundary lines that changed to reflect the character of the existing zone or to better reflect the zone that they neighbor, right? Because a use, maybe a dense residential use like R1 has crept into an R2 area, right? And you go, well, why did we have an R2 there in the beginning? Well, we had one there, but it expanded so much so that now that whole zone area or area mimics R1. So we might as well slide that into R1 so then the individuals in there have the benefits and the rights and use of a traditional R1 district. When it comes to downtown, as Mr. Williman said, a block here, a block there could make a pretty big difference in the type of use, and it impacts how that property would be leveraged.
Yeah, your explanation with a map of the appropriate scale will give a better perspective to us sitting here as to what it is you're trying to capture, because we're all pretty familiar with that area.
Yep. I'll make sure that Stu has enough battery in his pointer for next time.
Well,
or I'll stand here the whole time.
I think
we need the handheld mic.
You can sit there and talk all you want, but unless we have something, I'm a very visual person.
I think the goal is, and we talked about this before, is to shoot the image on the wall really big.
Yeah.
And then
be able to zoom in, because you can
Exactly.
see. So what you can see in here is you can see the major cross streets when you zoom into this, and you'll be able to see, oh, well, this is Walnut, that's Locust, Walmart. You'll be able to see what it is, and all of us probably do the same thing. You have a landmark in your head, right? You know Park Avenue because you know this house, or you know this street or this intersection, right? So you'll be able to pinpoint it better as we zoom into it, and put it on you put it over there? Okay.
I mean, whichever works best.
Yeah, we're up over there. But I know Mr. Williman said to go over just the downtown district. I want to give everybody kind of a general overview of the entire town, because in the next step of this, as we start to go through the next 131 pages, it's going to be about 3 pages per zone. And it's going to give you a description of, this is what the zone, what the zone entails. This is how big the zone is, and this is what is roughly permitted there. These are the things that we recommend remaining or recommend modifying. And it's important to know, as you start going through the various residential zones, how are they a little bit different? For the various downtown zones, how are they a little bit different? So, as you review, please don't hesitate. Give me a call anytime, text message, email, whatever. I'm always happy to. I know Stu is always happy to as well. Same for any members of the public who are watching. Any questions, please feel free to come to our meetings, ask questions. We're happy to be here, and it's very important for anyone who has questions. We want to hear thoughts and opinions. That's why we're here. That's why we have these meetings publicly. So please come and ask. For those that may be a little more shy and don't want to publicly ask, feel free. Give me a call, reach out to me, shoot me an email, whatever. I'm happy to have a side conversation and talk a little more about it as well. But this way everybody has general understanding of what this looks like. Chairman, we had talked about another meeting, special meeting on the 13th.
The 13th. So that would be our next meeting.
That would be our next meeting for this.
Yeah, we have a regular joint board meeting for February 7th, which is our regular meeting, and then the following Tuesday on the 13th, we'll be discussing more on this.
Yes. And that meeting will be here in council chambers on the 13th again.
At 7 o'clock.
At 7 p.m. And that will be a master plan only.
Correct.
Similar tonight, we won't take any other business other than that. And if everyone is comfortable with it, I think what we should do is we should review the next 131 pages. I think as you go through it, you'll see, okay, well, the first page of all the residential zones is largely the same, because it's all residential. But then there are some subtle differences between each of the ones, and they fall into each of the individual zones. And one of those 3 pages is a map that just pretty much shows you this town, but it only shows you colored the zone that you're in, right? To give you a just general understanding of where you're at. I think our goal should be to start working through that section. I don't think we'll be able to do what we did tonight and make it through the whole 131 pages.
No, we're good.
It's entirety. It's going to be a lot, right? And as we hop into a zone, You'll see some are, well, yeah, it's special preservation area, nothing changed. It is what it is, we can't do anything about it. Okay, and then there may be others where you look at it and you go, all right, well, why did the R3 zone move 3 blocks this way? Or why did the R zone and the R3 zone intersect and crisscross this way? And Stu and Dr. Hosick, who was very involved in that as well, be happy to give you our thoughts, as to, from the Master Plan Implementation Committee, how that transpired.
Jonathan, I don't mean to drift here, but next week we're hearing about West End development. Where does that fall in on that map?
West End development is, it's right in here.
Is it all within that area? The development itself that they're talking about.
So the West End development ultimately falls into a redevelopment district.
Right.
That the town has declared in need of redevelopment. That area currently falls into what looks to be the DT1 zone, which that DT1 zone is meant for residential type or housing uses that are close to downtown.
Maybe Stu can explain how a redevelopment.
Yes. So it's important that we don't get confused between what we'll call base zoning and redevelopment zoning. When the redevelopment initially took place, and this dates back to, I want to say 2003, it may even be a little bit earlier than that, and then there was a process that worked through a lengthy process, and there were a number of sections of this section of town, not all contiguous, that were designated to be in need of redevelopment, and then a redevelopment. So that's the first piece, is that they were found to qualify under the state law, the redevelopment law, as meeting certain standards to be designated to be in need of redevelopment. The next step is that a redevelopment plan was adopted. And that plan supersedes local zoning. So while this map shows it as a DT, excuse me, I'm sorry. As a DT1, the reality is it's the plan that governs. And the plan in this particular section of town was to have townhouses. And that's exactly what is being proposed. So, a lot of details as to, why things happened and didn't happen over the course of time, some of which I know, some of which I don't know, some of which I probably don't want to know. But in any event, there is now a developer who we have been working with for some time, who has put forward a set of plans for their project. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 units. That's not the exact number, but
66.
Oh, it's 66?
69.
It's what?
I thought it was 60. Do we have to reduce it? And last meeting, didn't you have an ordinance to change that? There was a density issue with the plan.
60-some.
In any event, and we are now, so we submitted our completeness report, that went out. Did that go out to the board?
It did.
Yeah.
Okay, and our technical review, Mark Herman is finishing up now, and that report will go out to you as soon as Mark can get it done. He's been sick this week. So that's going to be a big project. There's a lot of moving pieces to it, a lot of technical pieces, but you'll be seeing that on Wednesday.
Basically, when you have a designation of an area in need of redevelopment, there's some practical limitations with the site as it exists, in reality, that just the incentives of normal zoning can't deal with all the things that you might have to do, and the designation gives you the authority to overcome some of those limitations that just abiding by the local zoning would not really give you an acceptable result.
Yeah, it's sort of, but for the redevelopment process, this area won't get redeveloped.
And we gave them, when they developed the redevelopment plan, there were guidelines. It wasn't just come in and build townhouses. It was much more specific than that.
There's architectural, sample architectural drawings of the kind of things we want to see. There's renderings within the plan itself that says this is how we want to see this developed.
There's permitted setbacks.
Yeah.
And there's
Yeah.
requirements for keeping green spaces and trees, and it's a very descriptive process. No shortage of lawyers involved.
No doubt.
So I hope that answers.
Yeah.
Jonathan, I don't mean to nitpick, but you keep saying the first 131 pages, the second 131 pages, it looks to me like land use amendment, section 6, section 6 starts.
It may be, I remember that the first, pages 1 through, I don't have my phone away, pages 1 through 23, and then it was pages 24 through 131 or 132, and then land use is 132, and it may not be 131 pages.
Section 6 starts on 132 and it goes to 265.
So I apologize, it's 134 pages. I apologize, I did not commit that number to memory, but I'll do better, Doc.
So you were off by a page?
I was off by 3
When he's not
pages.
nitpicking.
No, it looked to me like it went, but I think I misread something.
I'm going to work to do better. And the reason why I think we should stop there is because, one, that's all the similar type of work. Two, as Mr. Morgan said, that's the core of the plan, right?
Municipal land use law is how it started, is the section heading.
Section heading under
6.0 is land use plan element. 6.1 is municipal land use law.
Oh, okay. 6.0 is only one line, all right.
Yes. Yep. And then after that, you get to housing plan element,
Right.
and then you get to the remainder of the plan becomes the statutory requirements that a master plan must have. We must review our plan to neighboring elements and neighboring plans, right, to make sure that we are similar in some ways, or in ways that we aren't similar. Should we be considering something that other people are? There's a lot of legalese and requirements that fall into there that are less impactful, or in some cases not impactful at all, to the town. So the next part of the piece, the next piece of the puzzle is I would say the biggest piece. But what we just did tonight, I want to make sure everybody understands that that's a pretty considerable review. We reviewed in that stretch the policy statements and the supporting strategies that will help enact those policy statements for this master plan, that ultimately, if this board were to move forward, would become a document, a forward-looking document over the course of the next 10 years, right? So when we look at some of the policy statements and supporting strategies, you put in your head, well, would we do this tomorrow? Well, maybe it's not a tomorrow project. Maybe it's a 2026 project, 2028 project. Right. But it's an opportunity and a way for us from a land use board perspective to help guide this board, as well as Hammonton Town Council, whoever may sit in their seats, over the course of the next decade, and say, this is the town, this is the way that we see town developing from a land use perspective. So it really allows us to leave our mark. So I appreciate everybody taking a very diligent review of it along the way. And I'm here to help in any way I can.
One of the things that I forgot to mention, it's in probably for this part, have we discussed anything about assisting with our parking situation that we may have throughout the town, as far as with the businesses in the downtown and things of that nature? Is that anywhere in this?
It is referenced, and it is let me see if I can find
Because
it.
there's some things we'll need to address, whether it be along West End area, that have to get cleaned up eventually, that we have to assist with.
Bear with me a second.
But bottom line is that's something that we could put into our master plan.
Well, it's there. I'm trying to find it. It
Okay.
is there. It's there the same way we talk about the signage, is that it's recommended that it, I can't find it real quickly.
That's fine.
But it's recommended that it be looked at as part of a future project.
Well, the future's now, right? Or at least I think it should be.
Yeah,
That's okay.
it'll take me a while to find it. There's like 500 references to the word parking.
Well, we could just take a look at it the next time we're here.
Well, actually, it just came up as a matter of fact. So it's under circulation policy.
Okay.
And it's, the strategy is explore the effectiveness of the current downtown parking program and expand, bear with me, expand public parking locations to support activities in this section of town. That's
Okay.
That's basically it.
All right.
One of
I
the,
think,
this is
Go ahead.
way out of, this is way too specific for tonight, but I'd like to get it on the table anyway, since you said parking. One of the things that I have gotten from several people is, why are there no handicapped parking spaces on the main streets, like on Bellevue Avenue, for example? And I don't have an answer to that question, but.
Well, I think there's a couple answers. The first answer is Bellevue Avenue is a state road, so address it to DOT.
But don't we set parking on Bellevue
It's
Avenue?
all them.
Yeah, to create a restricted parking, to create parking that is restricted to, whether it be handicapped or expectant mothers or what have you, that is not just entirely public for everyone. The state on a state highway would need to approve it. Similarly, the county would need to approve it, because it's restricting a public use to not just the public, but to a subset.
Well, then let me back down and let's look at like 2nd Street, or.
I think those are, you're absolutely right, and they should be looked at.
This is way too early for that.
Yeah, something that in commercial districts, right, where there are a number of spaces, can one or others be dedicated as handicapped? That's probably a good question to run through our chief. I'd imagine the chief would have a good idea of what is and is not permissible, and I can take that to him.
Doc, all the businesses behind obviously they have handicap parking, so where Casciano's not in the front,
Yes,
but
but
behind
in the
there
parking
has-
lot behind there is.
There's handicap, but
parking.
none out front, like you said, none on the street, let's say.
None on the street.
Right.
And none on the, on the side streets where there isn't parking behind the building.
Correct,
Such as behind Casciano, et cetera.
Mr. Chairman, to get back to what you were saying, as far as parking, that is becoming an issue, I think, and especially in the downtown. We have some, I would call them embryonic changes occurring in areas that had been pretty much depressed, but we have seen a rebirth, especially on the southern side of the railroad tracks there. And the thing that is really going to be a challenge to keep that going is the other dearth of parking that we have off-street that is really wanting. And I don't know how we address it as a planning board. I mean, we can put that as a goal in the master plan, but it really is going to take a concerted effort by the whole town, especially council.
Well, one of the things we had talked about, I guess, even with the chief, was to, across the street from where West End is, what's the name of that street there? Lincoln, put an angle parking there to create a little bit more space there
Together
for
with the
parking
crosswalk
for
in the state.
the businesses, whether it's West End, and the next businesses up the road, and any the future development up the road.
Right.
And I think it's important for us to assist them.
That,
And I don't
and
know
we
where
had
that went,
talked about
because-
crosswalks along 12th Street.
Right.
and
Yeah, we-
appropriate
Yeah,
locations.
I know that's being talked about.
Yeah, that's being talked about at a municipal level. We approached the DOT with a series of additional crosswalks, not just in the core downtown, but now in the downtown 3 and downtown 4 districts, as well as in the Gateway district that runs from like 7-Eleven up through Wawa area. A number of lighted crosswalks to have in those spaces. So that's something that we're actively working on too.
And south of the railroad tracks.
Yes,
Yes.
all the way south of the railroad tracks. Yep. Up through 2nd Street, or 2nd Road. Second Road.
Okay. Anybody else have anything, comments for the good of the order? Anybody want to say anything out there now? Or are we still good? Mike? Okay. All right, so if there's nothing further, then we'll adjourn. Our next regular meeting would be next Wednesday, the 7th, for our regular scheduled meeting, and then we'll follow it up on the 13th to continue with this master plan. You guys did an outstanding job. Thank you for your presentation, Jonathan and Stu, Doc, for your work on this as well. And guys, you got some homework to do. I will test you at that meeting on the 13th to make sure you did your work, okay? Thank you very much. We're adjourned.
Thank you.